Has many effects on national level. As the files of the Fit for 55 package are progressing with the co-legislators. So we are also very pleased to have Mr. Mosley from the European Commission here today, also in the view of our particular interest as well in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that we are very closely working on. And as we have heard, we will discuss today how circular principles can be exploited through also the roundtable. So we are very much looking forward to that. And not to take any more time and to leave the floor to our colleague Anna Tiso to introduce the project as well. I wish you a very successful webinar, and we are looking forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. So now I give the floor to Anna Tisov, which is the project coordinator of the project Drive Zero. So Anna, I leave you the floor so that you can introduce the project.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and see the screen? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thanks. And see the screen.
Exactly. Yes, all works. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, so as Maria mentioned, I'm a project manager at Huygen, and also we are the coordinator of the Drive Zero project, which is a European project that was funded under the call of topic decarbonization of the EU building stock. The project started in October 2019, so before the COVID crisis and the energy crisis, and will end with approved amendment by the end of the December this year. So we have a couple of months left. Where what we saw with why need for circular construction or the Drive Zero project is that what we observe still today, even though the project was written, the proposal was written in 2018, what we see is that oftentimes sustainable building construction compared to conventional building design results in higher upfront costs and longer construction time. Though most of stakeholders do see an added value of sustainable circular renovation or new construction, those benefits are still mostly invisible since they're also not incorporated in the circular consumer-centered business models. So the discussions today are quite timely to speed up the process in this transition going from conventional construction towards more circular one. And why do we actually need a change? I believe that most of us today here, we do know the data, the statistics, but here is just to recap that really doing as usual is not possible, and we really need to transit because the buildings do emit a lot of, they consume a lot of energy and therefore emit a lot of CO2. Quite high is also the percentage of the embodied energy. So most of today's buildings produce most of the embodied energy in the production and the manufacturing processes. A lot of materials extracted in EU are actually attributed to the buildings. And also regarding the waste, so within the linear economy models, we do produce a lot of waste in the construction sector, which is actually quite bigger than, for example, compared to household waste. This number is 3 times higher. So we do need to be aware that we have to change, and also referring to the 6th EPCC report, the latest one is basically also stating that if we do want to go towards the decarbonization of the building stock, we really have to see and implement measures in the current decade that do not lock buildings in carbon. So this is why we have the Drive Zero project. Within the Drive Zero project, we really believe that circular processes are local dependent. So we have to look at the local context. We have to stimulate local collaborations. And we identified 7 different collaborations in the EU countries. So we have partners in 7 countries, industry partner connected to the academia partner. And we have the 3 EU umbrella associations, one of them, of course, UIPI, who is also the host of today's webinar. And alongside, we also have Housing Europe and Architects Council of Europe. So objectives, what we do, just briefly going through, we take existing market-ready products that are already approved and accepted within the construction markets, and we look on how we can redevelop these products and concepts into more circular ones. So either looking how can we replace towards more environmental friendly materials, basing the whole processes on renewable energy generation, how we can use existing materials through urban mining, focusing on the PMP solutions, and also really embracing and embedding more BIM controlled production processes. Then the second is really to go into the consumer-centered business models. This is something that the webinar today really focuses upon, and I'm really happy about this, especially about the roundtable. So what we do see is that basically, as long as we don't get the uptake and integration of those added benefits of circular projects into consumer-centered business model, then there's no real value. So we really have to see on how to make these models more consumer-based. And what we do in Dry Zero, that it's quite specific, we do link these principles of circularity with a combination of specific local drivers. So socioeconomic technical drivers that are specific for a certain location, geocluster. As I mentioned, the key for the uptake is that actually the stakeholders involved do understand this added value of sustainable renovation and circular construction. So we do provide clear information interested and understandable to those key stakeholders groups. And in the end, we do test all these concepts and strategies in the 7 demonstration buildings in the European countries, in Estonia, Greece, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Spain. So as I mentioned, we take the ready, market-ready products and we redevelop them and then implement them in the real live demonstrators. We go from, for some cases, we first develop mock-ups and then went into real life demonstrators, so we could also already learn from the mock-up situation. And this is the situation before. So those are our buildings in 7 countries. We chose really typical, we selected buildings that do represent a typical building typology. So there is a high replication potential. And this is now the status. For some buildings, we are still with the mock-up developments. With some, we already did a full renovation and are now just in post-monitoring phase, where for today, we will see presentations from the Spanish, Slovenian, and Greek demonstrators. So we will learn from those local pilot leaders who are actually, the investors are private homeowners. And to conclude, I would just like to say that despite the fact that currently in the market, we still run on mostly non-circular business model, this doesn't need to be the case in future. So we can really start learning slowly on how we can close those loops and come towards more circular consumer-centered business model. And I'm happy that now our colleague, Professor Elettra Agliardi, will take over from the University of Bologna and will speak a bit more about what it means to develop consumer-centered circular business model for private homeowners. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna. As mentioned, I will now give the floor to Professor Elettra Agliardi from the University of Bologna that developed this customer-centered business model and will explain it to the participants now. Thank you, Elettra.
Thank you very much to everybody for joining us in this webinar. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, fine. Right, as was already said, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the idea of circular business models. And in particular, as already been said, we already know that the circular economy is a key objective of the European Green Deal. It is a pillar also, for example, in the action plan for the renovation wave. And in general, it's a priority policy in the European Union, where the idea is that this could be a way to promote a much needed shift towards sustainable development. But for that, it requires innovation in the types of business models used. In a sense, we want to say that in terms in particular of companies in general and companies in the building sector, we need to think of new ways we do business instead of just what we do normally. And very often, I would say that people think that this is more a matter of technological innovation. Technological innovation is often misunderstood as the only type of innovation in this field. It's important, of course. We need to think of new materials, new inputs, of course. So new technological innovation, things in terms, particularly in the energy sector, which is absolutely fundamental. But at the same time, we have to think also of social innovation in terms of a process encompassing new solutions and processes that meet society goals. And at the same time, they change behaviors and leading to new improved capabilities and relations and better use of assets and resources as well. So in a sense, technological and social innovation has to go, as I think, step by step together with the business model innovation. The complexity of the type of innovation we are thinking of is that it affects all stages of production, as in a way that I will make it precise in a few minutes. It affects product design, production and distribution, use, end of life, and also the product characteristics in terms of longevity, durability. But in addition to this, so in a sense we say that it's also a challenging type of innovation because of this complexity, but at the same time, policy enablers should have a role in this, because they have to support this business model innovation by providing, of course, adequate laws and regulations, financial support, of course, and economic incentives, but also other policies to enable successful circular business models. Some already are there, in the legislative measures, and then we will have the opportunity of listening to some updatings within the European Commission works in terms of different directives and taxonomies which have been already introduced. And in particular, we know already a lot in terms of some features of energy-related products, but more has to be done also as far as education, awareness of users, consumers, and I will try to be more specific as well. Before that, I just wanted to see, why should the private sector, the private housing, why should they care about circularity? So this is probably a preliminary question that we want to know. Of course, a circular economy may be the response, as already been said also by Anna, to resource and climate pressures, also to changing consumer preferences, to the volatile commodity prices, in particular we are experiencing these days, and also to the recent project in information technology digitalization. But I think that in order to be accepted for the private sector, it has to be a sort of win-win strategy, because on one side, it has to be a mix of tangible and intangible offerings that, of course, fulfill consumer needs, at the same time minimize resource use, waste, pollution, but at the same time, they should be able to give incentives, in particular economic and financial incentives, in order to make long-lasting products and monetize their use value. So the private sector should also understand that, of course, this could be, as I said, the right move for sustainable development, and also to create a more sustainable country, in a sense. And for this, of course, companies have, as I said, to deploy these business model innovations. These are needed as tools to enable this transition. The organization, in a sense, at the end of the day, have to rethink and build more specific practices for value proposition, value capture, and value delivery. And in particular, the idea of a circular business model, which is consumer-based, becomes crucial to meet the objectives I was mentioning before in terms of social and environmental ambition, but at the same time also to improve financial, social, environmental performance, and of course also resilience and more stability against risk. I mentioned value proposition, value creation, delivery, and capture. Just a few words to be more precise about this in this context. Once I talk about value proposition, basically I think that we have to focus on services that satisfy user needs. And in particular, these have to maximize consumer use of products. So this has to do with product and service offering, but we have to understand that our purpose would be to reduce production materials and better align manufacturer and consumers' interests at the same time. Once we talk about value creation and delivery and the way we have to think again of these concepts, which are basic components of a business model. Again, we are talking about the product and service offering and delivery, but in this case, it's through internal resources and capabilities, as well as the value chain, the activity system, suppliers, the network with partners and customers in particular. So supply chain become in particular very important, but at the same time, value creation is performed through redesign for durability, repairability, upgradability. And finally, when I talk about value capture, here I in particular mention how company generates turnover and profit, its revenues basically. But again, this has to be in order to enable consumer to access previously very expensive products and therefore expanding the market potential of the new innovation. So in a sense, consumer here have basically to pay for the use of the service, and new contracts, new types of models have to be developed in this context. Within the project, we studied various types of circular business models. Of course, here we do not have time to go through all of them. Just I wanted to go again on the concept I mentioned before, that we have to think of the business models and innovations which has to be performed in the different stages. And therefore, for example, to the right in this slide, I mentioned the three main stages of circular business models in terms of circular procurement and design model. Once I talk about procurement, for example, we have to think of the way we can, if it is possible, increase the purchase of used infrastructure or use infrastructure which have a longer product life. Once we talk about circular internal production process models, of course, so here we have to think of different ways of performing this in terms of increasing use of renewable energy, for example, reducing material consumption, and this has to do with, for example, including packaging, paper in the production process, reducing more general waste products and residual material inside and outside the company. And finally, circular after sales, after use models. This has to do with the idea of, for example, extending the warranty and improve maintenance and repair services, improving access to spare parts, increasing range of product upgrades, updates, and after user services. This has also to do with the possibility of resale, upgrade, or return products. These are various types of categories, and here you can see, I mean, how these have been discussed within the literature, more generally in terms of circular business models, and then in particular within the circular construction. And in particular, if we come to the construction service, we can think of specific product service designed for consumers, users. And these have to do, for example, with these categories, which are listed here in terms of extending product life. Within our project, we study different solutions in terms of design and disassembly, modularity, industrialized manufacturing, and in terms of facilitating, for example, product upgrades, updates. In particular, the modular facades are tailored to different needs, because you can think in terms of also different materials where the design could be used also with the, as I said, also with the different materials, even though adapted to the regional climate and the regional different countries. In terms of facilitating recycling after use, so in particular in terms of end-of-life recovery, but also in terms of expanding different types of contracts in terms of rental leasing opportunities and sharing platform. And of course, at the end of the day, what will really matter is to reduce environmental pollution during use by use, and therefore energy consumption, water, soil, air, noise pollution become relevant aspects once we think of the design. In terms of contracts, I was mentioning before, very often we need to think of different types of contracts where what becomes relevant is the use, as I said, and therefore service-based and performance and efficiency-based contracts. So we have, for example, the paper service contract where the provider is responsible for cost of the product and is still encouraged to optimize the design of the product or the service. Revenues in this case are tied to the use of service. So there are periodic fees, for example, or other type of contract arrangement. Similarly, the pay performance contracts where manufacturer keeps ownership of products and leases them to the client, and revenues are tied to the performance. There are plenty of different modes of securitization for energy, in particular for energy retrofitting. So we have different types of contracts. We can think of renting and sharing, where revenues are tied to the provision of a service or product during a specific period of time, the time of the contract, and the leasing, where revenues are tied to access to a product, but you also have the purchase option on that. And types of pooling contracts where you have basically shared ownership. Within the project, I will be very brief because we don't have much time. We have been working and studying in the different case studies. We have been studying in which stage of production the value proposition, value creation, delivery, value capture have been modified because of the different strategies that you can see on the vertical axis in terms of cycling, extending, materializing. So basically the focus here could be expanded in two directions, in terms of the inter-organizational perspective and in terms of value network, where value exchanges among different stakeholders. And therefore, this allows us to understand also in particular in which way innovation, the innovation I was talking before at the beginning, is located, whether it is an innovation which is more technological, for example, in terms of digitalization, whether it is more on service models, for example, think of take-back models, whether consumer new practices such as sharing and pay-per-use or pay-per-performance models have been introduced, and in general, what has been done in order to allow also to remove a shift from owning to other social practices, which are also part of the notion of circularity.
Thank you, Alexa. Eletta, I will ask you to wrap up if you can. But I feel that you're arriving. That you're
right.
Time.
However, and of course, here you have the different analysis we have been doing also in terms of assessment for the different industry patterns that we have, whether they are in transition or they achieved complete circularity in their process. However, before just wrapping up with some preliminary policy recommendations that probably we can have time to discuss later on in the final discussion in the roundtable, I just wanted to see that in our project we also understood and studied through various questionnaires what is also the awareness of user consumers. So in various cases we have been understanding that still we have to do more in terms of building awareness, in terms of changing of cultural norms and customers' value of ownership, because in particular, once you think of these different types of, for example, advantages of renting, leasing, or other practices, you still understand that it's more the economic aspect which becomes more relevant, while we want to see whether the main category associated with these different practices is not only the possibility of satisfying needs at an economic advantage, if you want, but in order to be able to understand more the advantages in terms of sustainability, which can be achieved by circularity. So often people still prefer to own the product, while we have still a lack of awareness of the new services which could be had through circularity. but I'm sure that we will have time to go through these also during the final discussion. So I can just stop here, probably just remembering that the main takeaways would be not only in terms of the technological innovations in terms of circular materials, product, service systems, but also we have to be more in terms of cooperation with customers, suppliers, and the whole circular business network, and also work on the social cultural factors in order to integrate all these aspects in the new types of innovation that we need in order to implement a circularity. There are already various good practices and success stories, and here we will listen to some Drive Zero stories. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elettra, for your presentation. And indeed, we'll hear now a few stories from the experiences of Drive Zero demo cases. Before doing that, I just want to apologize for the confusion with the names and remind participants that are still called Anna Klopper to send a message through chat so that we can rename you. And also, I would like to apologize in advance because I was informed that maybe Margarita cannot join in time. So I will leave the Greek demo case to the end. And if Susanna doesn't mind, I will start the round of Drive Zero demo cases with the Spanish demo case in Barcelona. Would that be fine, Susanna?
Yes, sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will give the floor to Susanna Prostaskova. I'm not sure if I pronounced it well. That works for Peak Architects in Barcelona and followed from the start the Drive Zero demo case in Spain, and will let us know more about it, about what went well and not well, and what we could learn from this experience. Thank you very much, Susanna. I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you, Maria. You should be seeing my screen now.
Yes, we are, Susanna.
Okay, perfect. So I will try to be brief. There is a lot of lessons that we have learned during the project, because we had the 3 different pilots that we were trying to apply the idea, the initial idea that we had as a driver for the Drive Zero project. Up. How does this move? Okay. So first, the initial idea of the system was to have these 3 system components to put together the green wall as a living wall, the BIPV, if possible, reused, photovoltaic panels, and also cladding coming from urban mining. Put them together and create an optimized system for retrofit of residential buildings. So this was the idea that we had in mind. The local driver could be triple. It would be increased comfort and energy efficiency in the building, which would be retrofitted. It would be also producing the renewable energy locally, and it will be improving the local urban space. This was all dedicated to mainly consolidated boundary walls, which are the walls that actually are opaque, and they happen to be in many European cities where due to the urban planning conditions, so they stayed opaque, and if they are consolidated, it means they will also stay opaque. So we were thinking to kind of use more efficiently this space. Then the strategies in terms of circularity. So as I already mentioned, we intended to reuse thermal insulation, cladding, even the photovoltaic panels that could be recovered from large installations. And also the other strategy, very important in this case, would be design for disassembly. So everything would be just mechanical connections. The risks that we were already seeing here were the needs for guarantee and durability of the reclaimed materials, and also their availability in the quantities that would be available. So the first project, the first pilot, as you can see here, so it was a residential building with 10 property owners. Here we established a direct connection with the owners, literally, let's say, ringing on the bell, with the intention of creating a participative design with the neighbors, with the owners, to create and co-design this implementation of the Drive Zero project, which is located in the 22 innovative district in Poblenou, Barcelona. You can see some pictures here. It was a very well-oriented wall towards the south. We also created a network of local companies that we wanted to collaborate on this project. You can see also the property owners from Barcelona as one of the partners. So we really talked with a lot of potential interested partners to work with us on this development. So we continued. We were trying to, let's say, find a way how to organize the photovoltaic installation on the facade in the most efficient way. We were checking the solar orientation and the inclinations and the production of these PV panels. We performed a solar study with the surrounding trees and buildings, so we also could optimize even more the energy production of this facade. And we were talking in all this process with the owners to understand like what were their most interests. So the positive part of that was mostly the possibility to open new windows for them, and also some of them were interested in investment in the energy production. So these were like the most drivers that we could identify, but there were also many barriers, and the barriers actually made impossible this actual intervention. And now I will try to briefly define them. So it was the maintenance and related costs of this installation that the owners were afraid of. Also, there was a fear of complex technical solutions because they were not very familiar with how the photovoltaic installation worked. Also potential structural risk, even if we explained that, for example, installing a new cladding to a facade is not a structural risk, but still there was this fear. And also the legal responsibility of if something would happen with this new installation. Also, it's better to have nothing than have something which like you have to be responsible for. So these were kind of the fears. I think we were tackling them, and we had the agreement of more than half of the owners to continue with the pilot project. But then the COVID-19 came, and we lost the contact with the building owners, and we couldn't really continue because they were not interested anymore, and we believe it's because of the lack of trust at that very moment where we couldn't be in real contact. So then we passed to look for another option where we could apply this philosophy that we had, how to, let's say, implement this system into buildings, into boundary walls. We found a different object which was not residential in this case, but it was an office building with a single owner who was also interested in circular economy. So that was also an interesting potential to check this project. And also, let's say there were offices that were rented by the main owner, and all these users that were here were interested in the business model of creating shared PV production. So this was again the driver. In this case, we just continued collaboration with few of the partners because we also realized that it was very complex to try to kind of involve everyone at the same time. So these were just mainly the really material and service providers. So what happened here? So as I already mentioned, the interests of the owners were really the circular economy and the shared energy production, but also the fact that this solution would make the facade, which was visible from the street, looking attractive, and it will increase the value of the building as such. But again, we had many barriers here, which again, we could not resolve. They were regulatory barriers. So there was the potential that the building just next to this one would be increased. So we would just have a very little part of the facade left where we were sure that the installation would be, let's say, forever. Also, the installation and maintenance were very complex in this case because we didn't have direct access to the facade, and the related costs actually made it impossible for the business model to work here. Plus also the PV installation, when it's in the facade and the facade is not perfectly south oriented, even if it's south oriented, but let's say the energy production really decreases with the non-perfect orientation and inclination of the PV panels. So combining all these financial aspects, at the end, we were not able to make this business model work in this case, which actually gave us an understanding what would be the cases where it could work, but we couldn't find such a case for this project so far. So finally, we decided to go, instead of like making a system which is quite complex and it needs to involve business models and collaboration of many partners, to change the mindset and create a product which would kind of integrate all the learnings that we had from the previous experiences. And we created this photovoltaic planter, which is actually a combination of what we already planned to put to the facade, the green wall and the photovoltaic planter. With, I will just mention two advantages. One is that the inclination of the panel in this case is more adapted to the optimal one. It also shades the, let's say, the base for the plants, and the plants you don't need to really use the whole all layers of the green wall facade, but you can just plant here plants that would be growing and covering the facade and also creating the shade and the positive green effect that we were looking for. So the partners, we just stayed with one of our original partners, Vertical, which is a producer of smart green wall and roof solutions. And the circularity that we were keeping in this application was the design for disassembly, the renaturization with minimum water consumption and safety in usage. These both final ones based on the smart solutions which are being provided by Vertical. And also we incorporated a new partner, a company that provides active surface photocatalytic finishes ceramics, which is also good for the environment. But mainly we integrated them because we were doing quite the research on factory mining, which would be reclaiming unwanted cladding, in this case ceramic tiles from the factory stock, where, let's say, these stayed from other projects and they were not needed anymore. So we decided to integrate them in the PV planter, or the planter, let's say, in the case when it doesn't include the photovoltaic panel, when this one is needed. So we created this prototype. It's a let's say solution which is suitable for facades, but also for application that I will show later. It has a structure on stainless steel, integrated planters, smart irrigation management systems, and it's all based on mechanical connections. It has versatile applications, so not only the facade, which is the original application, but also it could be used in roofs to define the, let's say, the residential space, and also for safety. But it can be also used for terraces and balconies as a railing or as a shading bow as well. So it's very easy to kind of integrate this in the building. And we have proven, let's say, this possible integration in a competition, which was organized by the municipality of Barcelona for the residential retrofit of buildings, an addition of new exterior and interior spaces. We were one of the 3 winners, and the photovoltaic planter is one of the integral parts of this implementation. So you can see some pictures here.
And Susanna, just sorry for interrupting, just to ask you to please wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, I think this is the last picture, which was from a last event, which was also with the property owners from Barcelona, where the planter was presented. So that will be it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you all for being so timely with all your presentations. And now, because today is the national holiday in Slovenia, unfortunately, our colleague Jure Vespek from the University of Ljubljana, UIPI, cannot be here live with us, but he kindly prepared the presentation, a video, to present the Slovenian demo case, which my colleague is now about to share. So I give the floor to a recorded Jure. Yes, Anna, the sound is still not working. Sorry, just 1 second. All right, just 1 second. Sorry, I will just try and do it myself. So I ask you all to bear with me 1 minute. Also in the meantime, because I don't think Margarita will be here with us, I do have a presentation that I will share a link in the chat in a few moments with you. And also, if you could, for those who are still called Anna Klopper, again, a reminder, if you could send your name to Anna, which is called UIPI, I believe, in the chat. You don't have to share it with everyone, but if just send it either to UIPI or to all via the chat. So let me try and see if I share the video, the sound comes. Otherwise, we have an alternative, but this way of sharing would mean a better a better quality of the video. But unfortunately, Anna, I can also not select the option share sound, so we have to share the video. We can just do the. So we had tested it yesterday. Unfortunately, a little bit of the quality of the text will be lost, but I think it's still readable, and at least that way you have sound. I will stop sharing, sorry. Thank you. By the way, while we're waiting, just if you, for all the participants, the sound is cut off, so you won't be able to share your sound, but you can put any questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be reading them out loud later in the dedicated Q&A session. So feel free to address questions to any of the speakers throughout the sessions. Can you now see the video?
We can hear, but we can see, but not hear. Still, there is no sound.
We're very sorry for the wait, but for some reason we cannot share the sound with you. So what I would propose maybe is to come back in 5 minutes. Let's do a short break now so that my colleague tries, or just do the short break that was planned 10 minutes later. Let's do it now if Philip doesn't mind. And thank you for joining us today, Philip Mosley. So maybe we'll do the break now and come back in 10 minutes, and hopefully we'll have the video sorted out. In the meantime, I will also share with you the link of the Greek demo case throughout the chat. So thank you very much, and see you in a few minutes, if that's okay. Thank you. See you later.
And any extra data, if anybody's got any extra data, that is also welcome. On the there was a comment you made on the global warming potential, biogenic, I think, for construction products and the environmental product declarations. The idea in the construction products regulation revision is that the carbon footprint of a product will be a mandatory piece of data to declare for the product manufacturer, and that they should declare the total global warming potential, so the carbon footprint, and also the different aspects, the biogenic, the land use change, and the other one I can't remember. The three different ones.
Yes.
So the onus is on the manufacturer there of the product. For their own product, they should be able to calculate that and then declare it. And once that data is available for all products, then the designers and the developers can select the right product because they'll have
Yeah.
all the same data for all the products. So that's the idea. There are a lot of products at the moment on the market using environmental product declarations, but as I said earlier, they're not consistent. So we can't have a situation where the data is not consistent because it's not useful. So we have to harmonize on that. On the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, obviously that is led by our colleagues in DG Energy. So I'm not, the lead person on that, and not even in the lead DG on that legislation. However, I don't agree that there's a conflict between circular economy and energy efficiency. The need to renovate and the need to improve the energy efficiency of buildings is a need for, energy and climate reasons, which is entirely valid. The question is then, if you renovate a building, how you do it, and do you do it in a wasteful way, using high carbon materials and so on, or do you do it in a way that is not worsening the life cycle emissions? So say you're selecting your insulation for the wall, and then how much you put dictates the energy performance of the building. That's fine. What materials you use is a different question. You've got the choice. The architect and the engineer have the choice of all the materials, and they can choose a more sustainable or a less sustainable material for that. So it's not, I don't see it as a conflict. But if you do have more detailed comments on that, that I can pass on to the colleagues in DG Energy, I'd be quite interested to hear any concerns on that point.
Yeah, it's due to the fact that we in the Nordics are very blessed with near fossil-free energy. So the reduction in energy doesn't create a reduction in emissions.
Yes, yes, I understand that. And I know there are particularities in the Nordic countries also with the waste that you mentioned, the difficulty of getting waste down. One of the reasons for that, why the waste statistics don't look so great in several Nordic countries, is because of the heavy use of wood. And wood, although it's a renewable material, the trees grow back. Unfortunately, at the end of life, most wood is just burned, and a lot of it's used for, energy generation. But waste wood, instead of being recycled and reused, too much of it is just burned. So that means that you have in the waste statistics quite a lot of wood waste.
Yes.
So that makes it more difficult. But I know that there's that issue as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both.
Can I just add one more piece?
Of course.
Thank you very much. To regards concerns about EPPD, we kind of see also the problem, and I would add here the timelines, because if you start and promote to use the reused materials, and then, for example, for the housing sector, there are these 2030 and 2033 time periods before you should have finished the certain levels, whatever they are going to be. And of course, we at least hope that it would be on the national level of the building stock, as the council was suggesting. But still, I would see it as a very good development in the right directive, even it's not on your field, but still that if we would have more time, then it would be possibly more able to use also the materials and get the people to build with the reused materials, because now as we all agree that we are in a quite developing phase, but it might come too soon if we want to especially promote the circular economy in, for example, the single family houses, because you won't be able to get all these things and also take into the consideration the circularity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think again, as you say, that directive is for DG Energy, to answer properly. But all I can say is for the time element, the time is dictated by climate change. Unfortunately, the modelling that we're is showing what needs to be done, and the decrease in energy consumption that needs to happen, which has only become even more apparent with the war in Ukraine and the spike in energy prices. So it needs to happen quite quickly. I think that on the life cycle aspect linked to the EPBD, I know that both Sweden and Finland have got legislation at national level now on that, which is great, which is really good. So this requiring of disclosure of life cycle emissions of new buildings, and I know in Sweden and possibly even Finland, you're looking at setting limit values as well, which is quite an interesting thing, and that we're keeping a close eye on. In fact, I was speaking to the Nordic ministries only yesterday about all of this. So there's a lot of interest in this, and but yeah, the time element, as I said before, is that it is a race against time for climate reasons, but we obviously have to make sure that the industry is capable of delivering that as well. So that's also, there is a balance to be struck there. I agree.
So no, we are very much looking forward to the limit values for new construction, because it would drive the circular economy as well, and we also get sort of a state of the art or benchmark to relate to. Where should we be in terms of global warming potential or climate declarations, as it's called in Sweden. So this is something the industry has been seeking for, because we are obliged to disclose from January 2022, but there are no limit values, so you don't really have to meet any values. So this is a learning period, and we expect the limit values to be introduced by 2025 we estimate, but we don't know yet. We will see in May when they will be introduced.
Thank you, both. And I would like to ask Anna Tisov, are you, I guess you're still here with us, if you could, I don't know, because we didn't have the chance to hear about all the examples of Drive Zero that could have been useful here today. If you want to step in the conversation, and if there's anything you would like, any topic you would like to address, or to have the participants of this roundtable to address.
I was just talking with Emmanuel to present the Slovenian case, or no?
I think it makes more sense at this point to, I mean, you can present it orally. I think it would make more sense to keep the conversation going, also because we're almost arriving at the end of the program, but rather maybe to focus on some aspects you would like to highlight of the Slovenian demo case. How is it different maybe, and how can it be useful to understand in some concepts what might be barriers or lessons to be learned that could inspire good things to replicate, or I think it makes more sense to focus on these things than to go back to a presentation to present the Slovenian case, if you would agree.
Yeah, what I think it's similar, I mean, what is different maybe in the Southern European countries compared to like the whole EU agenda, etc., and stimulating the digital modular transition in the construction sector, is that in Slovenia, or I think in the Greek case is the same, Margarita is not with us today, but there is quite a traditional construction practice where a lot of work is like do-it-yourself concept. So a lot of like homeowners do a lot of things themselves, repair things. So there is already a circular practice. So what we were studying in Drive Zero in those countries and with those homeowners, basically, who are the owners of these single family houses, is how can we help them bring their own traditions so far with the new technology? So how can we combine both and really also stimulate these traditional practices that are there? In Slovenia, in rural areas, we have a lot of buildings that are actually, as also Fernando mentioned before, that circularity is nothing new. So how can we show people that actually circularity is nothing new to them, and really bring those new technologies together with this traditional practice and merge those two, basically. So I think this is also what we saw. Too bad we cannot see Jura's video, but In his video, he shows the 3 demo cases in Slovenia. And in those pilot buildings, we can see this merge, how we can reuse existing, for example, windows. In one of the cases, we also reused the thermal insulation from an old house that was demolished and reused it. Basically, it went through the production facility of Knauf Insulation, but they didn't need new material. But we reused the mineral wall. Yeah, so things like that.
I have a question now based on what you're saying, maybe to you and to Ricard, because the Swedish, in Sweden, some things are a bit more advanced and there's maybe some more data that can be used to answer this question. But when reusing materials or windows or any type of any process throughout the construction steps of renovation, is there, according to your experiences both in Slovenia and Sweden, were there liability issues? Who takes responsibility for these materials that are being reused? And was this ever, do you have reports of this being a barrier for property owners on one hand to go for it, but also for construction SMEs to also want to perform this type of renovation?
Of course, the liability issue is up on the table. It's been raised as one issue to be dealt with or determined when starting the reuse project. But as it goes along and we have starting to get more experience from reuse project, it turns out the liability issue is seldom followed up. So I have a quote from one property owner. So, well, we don't do liability issue for new builds. Why do we want to do it for reused products? They don't bother. So it turns out maybe it isn't such an issue after all, but it always comes up during discussions. The one thing that we do experience is getting building permits, because you're trying to do reuse product. You don't know what type of product, what color the windows will be or the facade elements. Well, the building permits need to know beforehand. So there you have an obstacle as well. You need to have sort of blanks in the building permit when you apply for building permits, because you don't know at that point. You will learn as the construction process, depending on what type of product you find or are available on the market. But that's another barrier. So we need to have sort of be allowed to fill in later. We need to be leaving some part of the application blank. That's one issue as well. But the liability turns out it doesn't really, maybe not be that big an issue after all.
We saw the liability also not maybe with homeowners so much, but also with the companies implementing the secondary material. So I do quite embrace the what Philip showed, that there will be eventually certification of secondary materials. I think this is quite an important milestone for this. So because we saw quite a lot of liability issues in the Estonian pilot case. So we did discuss how certification could be actually a driver.
We have an anonymous attendee saying, yes, please, to presenting the Slovenian case. I don't know if you want us to put the video going and Anna would comment, but before that, maybe I would ask everyone that's in the table, do you have any last comments you would like to share, or to one another, or to in general, that you would like to make some statements? And you could just put your hand up because you all have your video if it's the case. Marju, I give you the floor, and Ricard after.
And if I take my mute off, it's better. Sorry. Thank you, Maria. I would add to Ricard's last point, actually, one thing that is new in our new Building Act. Actually, when you are going to apply for the new building permit, it will be like the permit in the first case, but after it is finished, the building, you have to rewrite what have been used in the building. And actually your comment was just made me think that perhaps this could be actually a possibility for this kind of thing, because usually you think that if something changes, why would you bother in a new house to rewrite it? And we were actually arguing a bit against it, but now I see a point maybe for that. And then I also would add one thing, that all these different kind of marketplaces in Finland have been also one kind of like a social innovations, if you could say, that we have different kind of like building pharmacies. We have these kind of old barns that are collecting different kind of materials from the demolished houses, and people can go and buy all different kind of things. We have reused wool that you can buy. So I'm just like maybe looking in a happy spirit for the future, that we are going to get more possibilities to complete and be within the circular economic tasks and challenges, and make together the resolutions with our people who are in the end always the beneficiaries, but also the payers. But thank you for my part.
Thank you, Marju. I'll pass Ricard.
Yeah, I just want to add something about the skills. We've actually experienced there is a new profession in Sweden, which is called recycling consultants or reuse consultants with the architectural firms. And we have sort of rewoken an ancient skill of disassembling rather than demolishing. So we have one new and one old skill that's actually been we've seen a lot of in Sweden. So I think it's very fun actually, and I welcome it a lot. Thank you for listening to me and inviting me.
Thank you, everyone. So if there are no further final statements, I'd say for now. And
if you allow me, Maria, for a minute.
Sure, Fernando.
Yes. So just to keep on a positive note, on our side, we really want to take this topic to the next step. And this is why we are going to dedicate our Congress to sustainable finance and green public procurement and circularity in construction activities, which will take place in July. And thank you again, Philippe, to accept to also discuss with us, because there are many things that are not clear, and it wasn't mentioned in the comments, but about sustainable finance, Philippe mentioned that is voluntary, but it's so unclear to us that today we see behaviors changing, and it is affecting already certain behaviors, because even though it's voluntary and SMEs are not, let's say, the main target of it as of now, it is actually in the real economy being applied, and it's creating by banks, and access to finance is becoming a bit worrying. And I think we mentioned about the PBD, we mentioned already the taxonomy, we mentioned the CPR, but this sustainable finance part needs a bit more clarification on the potential impact in construction, even more so considering that in the current platform, there is no construction representative, and sustainable finance wasn't one of the main building blocks of the transition pathway for construction ecosystem. So just to put that consideration there, but we're keen on engaging in the conversation with property owners, with the Commission, and whoever else has a say on it.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I don't know if Philippe Monse also wants to say some few last words, or if I should go ahead and pass the floor to Anna Tisov to quickly go through the Slovenian case. Okay, and by the way, I don't know if there's any other comments by the previous speakers also. I saw that there was a Q&A session planned, but all the questions have been addressed. So participants still do feel free to write any questions in the Q&A. And now I'll ask my colleague Anna to share her screen and to put the video playing, and for Anna Tisov to be the voice off and commenting on what is being shown with the face of Jurek.
Yeah. So the thing I share with you, Ray, is that I'm originally from Slovenia, so I will now a bit improvise. So as I mentioned before, what we see in Slovenia is that we have the dispersed settlement pattern. What it means that we have quite a lot of houses living in urban areas. Can we a bit, is that going back or no, I'm a bit lost. Anyway, yeah, so what we see now is that we have quite some single family houses in rural areas plus multifamily houses in the urban areas. So as I mentioned, what we're bringing together is a bit this industrial modular approach. We do it yourself circular practices that are already traditional in Slovenian culture. 2/3 of population lives in single family houses, as it means. So there is a lot of, like, especially these old buildings that were done before 1980s that are not even insulated. And actually a lot of those are occupied by, I mean, those are three people households. So yeah, I don't know if you're still talking. Yeah, so this is first pilot building where we're done thermal imaging. So you can see the picture before and after. You see the building bit below. So what was done is there was done the roof insulation, the facade insulation. As I mentioned, there was a recycled material used, which was actually taken in the production facility by the technical partner Knauf Insulation. Yeah, so this is insulation wise. Then here what it's shown, it's actually, I mean, it's quite interesting that the recycled content was 80%. So 80% was recycled, 20% was new. There were no binders and additives, so environmental friendly insulation. Regarding the renewable, we can see that it was installed heat pump. There is a solar water heating collector. All the non-LED lights were replaced by LED lights, and of course local heat recuperation. So this, in the Slovenian case, we had 3 demo buildings. Here you can see the after renovation status inside the lighting part. So here you see the monitoring before and after, the temperature situation, and actually that they have also user-friendly application to follow the data, the temperature, CO2, which are now much improved. And then the second building is in Škofja Loka. So it's a 300 square meters single family house. So it's quite a bigger household family. I mean, it's 7 people living. Here was done also ATIX facade renovation, roof insulation, new windows, basement ceiling insulation, thermal insulation of the balconies. And what they did is actually removing old mineral wool. So again, recycling it. Roof tiles were used from an old building, so kind of reusing from an old building, and wooden paneling. So same as thermal imaging, you can see in this case. Again, said about the recycled content for the mineral wool product, where there was no artificial binder used. What's interesting here is that there was some legal constraints, since Knauf Insulation is not registered as a waste company. So how can they take what is considered at the moment waste material from a demolition site and take it back? So though, since it's a research and innovation project, of course, this was possible, but this is some legal constraint that we see for future. Then, yeah, this is improvements on the facade. Again, what it's here, the circular point is the recycling of secondary material, and that it's also optimized steel structure, so attached with screws, so it's easy design for disassembly. So no nails. Regarding there was already a heating pump installed. A wish is to go to the central heat pump. The additional part was the local heat recuperation, and same as in the first case, going from non-LED light to LED light. So this is how the building looks. It actually looks like a new building, even though that it's an old renovated building. So it has the owners are really satisfied, the consumers, with this. And again, also the after monitoring before. And then the third pilot case, it's a building in Kandrša in another region of Slovenia. So here also the deep energy retrofit included the renovation of the roof, facade, windows replacement, thermal insulation, basement insulation, and installing a new heat pump. Again, same as in before cases. I mean, the circular potential was using the old mineral wool, the recycling. And here we can see the 3D scan that was done for the wooden part, for the cladding. So here we see the recycled content, how it was taken apart, and then brought basically to Knauf insulation for in the production facility, and then brought as a new wool on the site. So same urban mining of the concrete. That was by Xela, by a local company. And then new aerated concrete on the side brought and installed. There was also in the third case, what was additionally was prefab panels for facade, so PMP solution, bringing extra space and kind of being the external extension on the initial structure. This was also done in cooperation with another European project, Infinite, where Slovenian partners are also involved. So, yeah, here. And of course, PV generation and PV installments. You can see some data again. Of course, what we said before, that there is also this practice of reuse and do-it-yourself things. So there was also just furniture that was reused, etc. You're reusing the windows for greenhouse. Yeah. Yeah, and some findings from Slovenian case. So self-construction, what is not really the needed skills to ensure the sufficient qualities. In Slovenia is practice that neighbors come and help, or like friends. The main problem of contractor is poor organization, especially with logistics. Transport costs are issue. And that, yeah, people do have this practice of not throwing things away and feel good about using the materials once again. And everyone wants to get rid of the waste, so they don't want to store anything that can be maybe potentially reused. So this of having like stores where this material can wait to be secondary used. It's not yet common in Slovenia, but there is a potential for that. So I believe with that, I will conclude imitating Jura. I would still like to see that Jura's presentation is uploaded somewhere, because I'm sure he added some other information. This was me a bit improvising.
We will. I think it's safe to say that we will share this both on the event page, but also we will put it on the Drive Zero website. We'll put on both. And thank you, Anna, for this hard task of presenting a video and incorporate Jure. And just to end, because we're already a bit after schedule, I would like to thank you all for the quality of all the information, the interventions. There would be a lot of things to actually mention on a proper and complete conclusion, but I would still would like to highlight some of the things mentioned, the main, let's say, what should be the main focuses, so that these everything becomes more circular and we manage to reduce embodied carbon print as much as we can in the next years and meet all our goals. So first of all, there is a big need for digitalization, for more data, which is harmonized and consistent, to, let's say, to enable a vast change and deep change. We do need to know how to manage, and most of all, to reduce waste, because this would solve problems in all the sectors. More cooperation is needed to try and help create, let's say, sharing and helping networks in all sectors that can also help enable this change. A simplification of processes and legislation would be ideal, and that policies are more adapted to actually what is happening in the different markets, and to the experience of and make use of the experience of all the stakeholders that are involved. We heard here Fernando, for example, saying that construction is not even, that they lack representation. So here again, more information, more data for more adapted policies. Upskilling, and this is the European Year of Skills, so it's important to remember this, that we need more skilled workers. Says we also need more aware citizens and consumers, and there would be many other things to mention, but because I saw that many ended their speeches or their comments on a positive note, I think one thing is also to remain positive and to have a can-do attitude. Even if there are many barriers, any effort towards better behaviors and better practices is positive. So all together to try and set up these changes. I don't know if Anna, you want also to do a last comment, or if we can say goodbye to everyone. So thank you all. Just quickly, let me just check if in the chat, no, it's also thank you notes. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to all the speakers and interventions. And hope just a last note, we will be having a capacity building event and a training event, a physical one in Bologna during the UIPI renovation tour of the 24th and 25th. The Drive Zero activities will take place on the 25th afternoon. Part of the trainings that will be, let's say, in the room will be streamed. Then there will be a site visit to the Drive Zero demo case in Italy. So whoever has a chance to be with us presentially, that would be great. If you cannot, you can still join the trainings and capacity building preparation before the site visit online. All the information will be available both on the Drive Zero website and the UIPI website under the Renovation Tour tab. And that's it. I hope you have a lovely day, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you for very interesting speakers also from Finland, and have a good springtime.
Thank you, Marjo, so much. Have a good springtime too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.